18 Colorado Buffaloes hit the transfer portal on Monday. Their spring game, we talked about it during Monday's show, was on Saturday. It was the only one broadcast on television. Deion was wearing a cowboy hat, really playing to the locals already, and not playing to the guys on his roster because based on what you're reading in stories at different websites, including CBSSports.com, I mean, he made it clear when he showed up. Like we all saw the press, the welcome, talking to the team. They put it on social media where it was, I'm bringing my bags and they're Louis. And if you're not part of this, you got to pack your bags. You're going to be getting out of here. And we've gone over it at length. And I mean, he's sticking to his word because 18 players hit the portal on Monday after the spring game. The total number of players who have left in the offseason since Deion took over the job is now up to 46. I don't know the math on this, but I think there are 10 players left that were actual contributors on scholarship last year's team still on the roster. And this is easily the most, over the top, I guess is a way to put it, overhaul of a roster in the transfer portal era that we have seen a coach coming into his first season. Is Colorado going to have enough players to field a team in the fall? Because I understand that you can bring in transfers, but are there enough transfers to bring in?
I think they're at 63 scholarship players accounted for, and which means I think they have 19 committed to come in the fall, so they can add 22 more if I'm correct about that, which is sort of insane. I talked to some coaches this morning on the phone about this, and a couple of G5s too, because I'm like, okay, Colorado as a roster is essentially like a mid-level G5 with a couple superstars on it, right? Who otherwise would be plucked away through the portal, like Travis Hunter and those type of guys. Man, it's really interesting to watch this unfold. A couple questions. Like, yes, Deion is correct in that he said, like, look, a lot of these guys are going to be gone. We're going to run a lot of y'all off. And I don't want to really get into the morality of that right now, unless you guys do. But, okay, so those guys are gone. I don't think all the guys who left are dudes that Colorado actually wanted to leave. I think a couple of the receivers they probably would have wanted to keep. Clearly, given the fact that they only have 3 scholarship defensive linemen on the roster, they didn't want to lose their 5th-year starting nose guard. Even if the fan base doesn't think the guy's good, like he's good enough to start in a Power 5 league and play all 12 games and not play terribly. They lost a starting linebacker. So I was talking to coaches, I'm like, okay, can you find 3 or 4 Power 5 quality defensive linemen right now? Can you find 2 corners? And I think 7 of their 10 projected scholarship receivers are true freshmen or somewhere, or maybe red shirts like that. That's kind of wild. These coaches, even I talked to a G5 guy, he runs a personnel department. He's like, they're going to be taking some major reaches unless they have a lot bigger names jump in than is currently in the portal. Like if we had to take 20 more guys right now, we would be taking a lot of guys who can't play here. So that'll be interesting. And then another thing to throw out here, how do you convince dudes to come to be backups? Because it's already hard enough if you're a Georgia or an Ohio State or somebody chasing a natty to be like, hey man, leave your starting gig, come be a backup here. You will play some, you won't start, but you might win a ring. Like you're not an NFL guy anyway. Here's a little NIL money. That's a hard sell. Not a lot of schools are able to pull that off. Colorado isn't playing for anything. One of the only things they have to sell, well, they have a couple things to sell. Playing time, if you're going to be a starter, but probably not much if you're a backup. And the fact that you get to be on the TV show, right? And maybe there's some NIL associated with that, depending on what kind of deal you work out. He's definitely doing what he said he would do in terms of shipping it out. But I'm not seeing the Louis come in yet. Where's the Louis?
That to me is like we're going to find out if he's the Pied Piper or not. Because what do you go for? You go to play for primetime. You're going. This is Deion Sanders, the brand. That's what he's been selling. That's what Colorado brought him in. That's why the stadium was packed. I think it's just partly part of the process. But I thought there was a couple interesting things. And Bud, you sent us this. I was not aware of this. That they made such a big deal out of players who earned the numbers right? There were only 13 players, I think you said, that earned the numbers, and 3 of them entered the portal. Like, to me, that would say that 3 of those guys they probably wanted. Like if they valued the way they were practicing, performing, buying into the culture, they give them a number, right? That's a reward. So those 3 probably hurt. The Jackson State guy that comes with him, that's obviously somebody they knew, and he decides to bail on Deion, like, who was very well aware of the culture of what was happening and what he was going to bring there. He decides to leave. There's a couple red flags for me. I texted you guys this yesterday. I'm going to take the under. I mean, I know Joe Klatt's fired up and everybody loved the atmosphere that was there. And Joe Klatt says 6 wins is what we're getting. And I just think it's going to be a rough year. And then it gets really interesting. Like, does the Deion effect still work? And can you carry the Deion effect after a bad season to recruiting and the transfer portal? I think that to me is the big question mark. Or does this thing completely come off the rails? Because I think that's a possibility.
Like the idea of a new coach kind of running off players is not new. Like it happens everywhere. Every time a new coach takes over, we have not seen it in this large of a number where this much of a team is being kind of, shown the door after spring practice. But that's another aspect of this. There's been 46 players, whatever, that have hit the portal since Deion took over. 18 more take off the Monday after the spring game. Did you accomplish anything this spring if half your team is leaving after you finish spring practice? Like, what has the last 2 weeks been doing?
Right. I mean,
I would say evaluating. I think you're still evaluating because see, here's the thing that I don't know. Of these guys that left, how many of them were they coach? Because if you guys seen the clip like that he said on Monday where he predicted we're going to have a mass exodus, we're going to see a lot of guys leave, and then he challenges every player. He's like, go in, ask your coach where you stand with the program. Like, ask him what he thinks of your job. Do you have a future here? Like, basically, I mean, that's what it sounded like. What I don't know if some of those players were borderline, that maybe they were coaching really hard because they want them to step up and like improve, and we can do it. But hey, you got to get a lot better. Like, maybe those players didn't respond to that messaging and there was a miscommunication, and then they're bounced and they're out, versus the guys that they're like, you're just not good enough. Please go. Like, that's what I would love to know. Like, the difference in their war room where they have a list of the entire roster and there's a red line somewhere on there that says, these are the guys we want. These are the guys we don't. How many of them that they wanted have they lost? And I think we know, I would say pretty confidently, probably 3 to 5 you've lost that you wanted. Maybe that number is a lot bigger, but until I know that, like, he said he was going to do it. Now, like, the tight end that posted the picture and like said he wasn't getting the film, that's welcome to the big leagues, man. That's like, it's a harsh reality. But if you think they're going to like give your film and just hand it to you, you probably should have planned that out before you left, because you probably could have gone into the film guy and said, hey, man, can you give me some highlights? And they would have done it for you. But to ask for it after, like, when you're in the portal, that's not the way things work. I don't think anywhere. Bud, you might have.
Well, no, Jim Moore came out and said that we believe it's actually our mission as college coaches to help these guys. And like, if you want your film, they'll help you get to another school. We'll give it to you. I mean, look, if I'm that kid, Colorado is a public school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm suing under FOIA.
FOIA, stuff. Yep.
Open records. Yeah. Really? Like that's part of my academic record and my thing here. Come on.
Because a scholarship you technically can't get out of, right? I mean, a lot of these do 4-year scholarships, right?
I know the Big
Well,
Ten
a lot of the
does. I don't
schools
know
will
about
keep
the
paying
Pac-12.
for it. You just don't count against the number.
Right.
So, all right, like, if we just construe all of the factors like in the light most favorable to Colorado, let's just assume, and this is not true because we know that there's about 5 guys that definitely would have helped them this year if they had stayed on the roster, because there's guys that they lost who are just, there's not better players than the dudes they lost in the portal. Think about this. Even if they all sucked, that everybody they lost was not going to play. Think about the challenges you have of incorporating 40 new guys in early August. They're scheme-wise, and they're running a really simple offensive scheme. And I did talk to some coaches about this morning. They said, look, they'll actually probably be okay there because they run that, old Baylor offense that Sean Lewis runs, and that's something. It's not a lot of plays. You can get guys in, but there's also like culture, team building, all that kind of stuff. And guess what? You play 11 Power 5 games. That there could be some issues with trying to build a team in the portal this late. And to Danny's point about what you got done in the spring window, evaluation, you know what you're not able to do? Evaluate these guys on your own team. What if you get a couple of these portal dudes in and you realize, oh, damn, none of these guys are actually any good, right? This is problematic. So I'm interested in that.
Hopefully they got their practice tape from the place they left. You can evaluate that.
By the way, the time to bet Colorado under, if you wanted to bet a win total this early, was Saturday, because it went from 4.5 juice over and it's all the way down to 3.5 juice under.
Really?
So it dropped a whole win when people saw that Colorado's players look like me and you and Tom.
Here's a question from Hot Danger. Will Colorado have more losses or carryover players from last year's team? I think Vegas has them both at 10 right now.
That's pretty good.
That's great.
I think they have fewer losses than they do carryover players. That's my final answer. But that's
they're
a
at
good question.
So the latest note I have is 16 guys that are still on the roster from last year's team.
I mean, that's like, there was another question too from somebody in there, and you kind of touched on it a bit. Let me find the question. It was how many of the 46 actually get picked up on other P5 rosters? I don't know, but depth, like, it's a long season for not even just like team chemistry and knowing what you're doing. You're going to suffer injuries. So it's not necessarily, oh, these guys are surefire starters, but it's like, it's nice to have somebody on the bench who is familiar with the playbook if somebody goes down. So yeah, it's going to be a problem. I think I just, maybe they get it all together. Maybe he hits the portal really hard over these next few months. Maybe they fill out the roster really well and they start the season on fire. I don't know. I'm not skeptical long-term, but I'm from what I've seen this offseason, very skeptical about Colorado in 2023.
I'm skeptical long-term to the extent of Danny's question, which is like, how long does the celebrity factor matter here?
Like if they go 2-10?
Yeah. Are kids going to sign up for that regardless? Okay. So guys who they've lost, who have gone to other Power 5 programs.
I got a couple here. Jarek Broussard going to Michigan State.
Michigan State, yep.
We don't count Boise, right? So I'm at 3.
Brendan Rice going to USC.
Yeah. Casey Roddick went to Florida State.
I got Dimitri Stanley going to Iowa State.
So there's, I mean,
wait, when did Brendan Rice leave? I thought it was last year.
No, Brendan Rice was on USC last year.
Oh, so
you're looking at the prior year. So I think they're at 4 that have gone to Power 5 schools already, and probably a couple that will end up that just jumped in this week. So I don't know. It's at the over under like 6.5, which does speak to the roster. Deion's right about that. This is a bad roster, but you could use all 6 of those guys still.
Yeah, nobody is going to criticize Deion Sanders for thinking he needs to overhaul that roster. It's just he might be going a little too heavy. He might be going a little too hard to start and getting his, out ahead of his skis a little bit. There you go. That's some good Colorado analogy right there for you. Everybody loves to ski in Colorado.